Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this session, which is presentation number 3, the second presentation of today. We had one yesterday. The presentation is on the theme, how airlines can come stronger from the pandemic than ever before. This will be done by Mr. Christoph Ritter, Managing Partner, Predictive Mobility, and he's also one of the distinguished AFRA partners. Christoph is a founder and CEO of Predictive Mobility and co-founder of Milanamos, both companies being dedicated to implement the agile marketing principles, network planning, revenue management, and commercial development. Christoph has 20 years of experience in the aviation industry, working for large international airlines such as Air France, Alitalia, and for the world-leading aviation IT consulting firm before launching his new ventures. Christoph, I will hand over the floor to you, and if we finish the presentation on time, we'll take a couple of questions from the floor. So please feel free, our participants, to send us the questions on the Q&A tab. Christoph, you have the floor.
Maureen, thank you very much, and good afternoon. And thank you to each and every of you for attending the sessions. We will, this afternoon, present and try to present with you some practical steps. And since I guess you will have the presentations, the main objective will be actually to keep 5 more minutes. If you have any questions, I will be happy to address it. So today we are presenting actually our company, so Predictive Mobility, which is a #1 provider in Africa of market intelligence solutions. And we are also working with Mitsubishi Aero advisory services that provide also support on the flight and fleet and long-term plan. So let's first to look at some forward number, and if we can move to the next slide, please. If we look at the number of seats operated in September 2021, so not really that far away, we can see that globally there will be a drop of 26% versus the same period of 2019, which means that basically we are missing, 1/4 of the seats that operates, which is better than the current drop of traffic, because in March it was minus 67%, but still there is a large gap to be met. What is a little bit more challenging is that actually it's the intra-African market which is more impacted and see the higher loss versus the international Africa to other regions of the world market, where the capacity is actually coming back stronger. And if we look at the next slide, actually there is something which is pretty unique, not I will say in a positive way, if you allow me, is that on the African markets, the international carrier, by the number of seats scheduled on the market, are a pretty large share of the market. And Turkish Airlines is actually the 5th largest operator, after obviously Ethiopian Airlines, by far the #1, Egypt Air, Royal Air Maroc, and Airlink in South Africa. But beside Turkish Airlines, there is also British Airways, Emirates, and Qatar within the top 10. And this is a little bit what is worrisome, because remember that in our data, we also include the domestic operations. Okay. At the same time, we see also several airlines, and you know them. We know the issue that South African Airways, Ryder Maroc, Tunis Air, LAM, Air Mauritius, and so on. So they are facing. And for sure, the COVID-19 has been an accelerator of the crisis that were already pre-existent in some of these airlines. And the key questions is really that if we go to the next slide, please, is that we see that Ethiopian Airlines and Egyptair are the true big winner because they managed to went through the crisis fairly well in comparison to other carriers. They had the benefits of having different type of operations, not only the passengers, not only the cargo operations, but they also had the flexibility to adapt their different operations and schedule to the pandemic. And I think that yesterday afternoon, Ethiopian Airlines had some detail gave us some detailed input on what they did and how they did it. At the same time, there is also some new carrier planned to be launched, lift in South Africa, in Burundi, as well as over the last 2 or 3 years, where different national airlines that started in Nigeria, Ghana, Guinea, Uganda, Chad, or Mauritania, and even Senegal. I forgot to mentioning why they're actually one of our clients, Air Senegal. Okay. So if we can move to the next slide. What does it really leave us? And if we look at the COVID-19, because we see that some airlines were clearly managed fairly well the crisis, okay, despite all their consequences on their financial. Some of them accelerate, but we see also some new airlines. And I think that what we want to present now is really what we will recommend, and not some complicated strategic and fancy, but rather a more practical step to be taken by the airlines, because this is what works, and this is what works not because we think of, but because we look at the data of what works in other regions, in Asia, in Europe, in Latin America, and what works also before the previous pandemic, the H1N1 that was in 2008, 2009. So let's first move on the next slide. And okay, here we go. Thank you. And first kill some let's say business comments that sometimes we are hearing. That the first one is that only state-owned carrier, only private carrier, successful state-owned carrier cannot be successful. Okay, in general term, it's not that simple. First, the state ownership is, especially in a challenging market like Africa, where there is not the mass and the volumes that you can find on other markets. The state ownership is an opportunity because in terms of and we just had a couple of presentations ago, some financial people that discuss about that the aviations were the risk for them, and being a state-owned company help you to have a better capital structure, a better and longer-term return on equity, and also it's a big guarantee for all your partner and supplier. Okay, but so you can manage the risk. The key things actually is not really who your owner is what the owner will do. Okay, and what's the boundary you put between the owner and the daily management of the airlines. And this is what I call the airline governance, but this is the key where successful airlines, okay, even if they are state-owned, you know, are able to be as profitable as a private company. And if we look at the way it works and the cooperation with an airline and the state is actually when the state understands that his role is not to micromanage an airlines, but it's actually to have a more global strategy. Okay, if it's a touristic destinations, or we can work on the hospitality, or we can work on all the different elements. Okay, where the airline is just one vector to bring traffic, but not the only focus as a state. So next slide, please. The second thing is usually the more national airlines there is. So if every country has its own national airlines, the less competitions there is, which is not very good because every state will try to protect their own national airlines and block the foreign airlines to operate. Now, if we look again at the statistics and on some market like Asia, Middle East, Europe, Latin America, actually there is lots of national airlines, and even some fairly small and micro countries have their own national airlines. So the problem is not really the national airlines, is actually the overall policy which is behind. And SATAM is clearly the way to go. And I think that everybody recognizes that the open sky policy will help not only the national airline to compete, but also to overall what is happening, it will increase the aviation market. And if we look at Europe, the aviation market, which is now in Europe, is perhaps 5 times higher what it used to be when there were no open sky. And this is the only thing. The SATAM initiative is just a way to increase widely the size of the cake. So even if you get a small share, still the cake is much bigger. The second action is also to cooperate. And you know that we have, since now 2014 with AFRA, the route network cooperations initiative that we are supporting. And that's also very important. It's if we look at other market, it's not that unusual that an airlines have a code share with 5, 6, 7, 10 different airlines. Okay, it's not that unusual to have a flight with 5, 6 different code share partners. Okay, and there is this logic that yes, you can compete, but you can also cooperate, and you can compete on the market where you are fighting directly, but cooperate on other market. Okay, and it's something which is a pretty efficient strategy. And if you look, for example, between the Middle East and Europe, some carrier they do have code share. For example, if you look at Qantas Airways, they have the code share with Emirates, but it's not that Qantas Airways just open widely the door to Emirates. It's just they have some specific area of cooperations. Okay, and on other market they do compete. Okay. So next slide, please. Now, our first recommendations is that actually what is very important is to have what we call a strategic focus. Okay, and the strategic focus is not to come up with a complicated strategy, but it's actually your strategic focus are your talking point to your customer. Okay, so you need to decide whether what's your brand as an airline does mean, which kind of market you want to address. Okay, so you need to really have a clear strategy, which is understandable by the public, because the public, they need to trust your operation. They need to understand that you will be there and you will continue forward in the future. And that will be the way to go, and the way to go to address the crisis. Because what I've been sometimes seeing is when there is a crisis, is we have some airlines that try to do everything at the same time, and that the reality is that for the market, okay, not only your business partner, the travel agency, but also for the consumer, they don't really understand, and for them, this sort of frenziness in doing many things translates in risk and actually better that will pass away. So next recommendations. Next slide. Yeah. So the second thing, and it's pretty straightforward, is just choose your market. We did a study, and it's available on the AFRA magazine. But basically, we demonstrate that the successful airlines, okay, especially in Africa, basically operate uh, uh, almost 66% up to 75% of the market in monopoly, and only 25 to 33% of their market are in a duopoly or with more operators. And this is pretty important. Okay, yes, you need to operate the main market, the main trunk routes, but you need to find markets that you know that you will have limited or no competitions, because on this market you will make a much higher margin. Next recommendation. Next slide, please. Sorry. Okay, the third one is also you need to start to sell. And I just looked at, we are partner with OAG, and if I look at the winter 21-22 IATA season, very few African carriers have already published their schedule, while most of the carriers around the world, they already published their schedule. Okay, so and if you don't publish your schedule, you cannot sell, and if you cannot sell, there is no cash coming in. Okay, and if you look at the low-cost carrier, especially in Europe, but also if you look at AirAsia, they are selling their flight 12 months in advance. Okay, and I'm already starting to receive promotions for Easter break in 2022. So I understand that in Africa it's worked a little bit differently. The booking are coming later, but still there is some market that you can sell before. But for this, you need to identify which type of traffic. The tourists, they like to book well ahead, so that's the market you need to go. The small entrepreneur that fly regularly between two countries, that's also some markets which like to book earlier, which can be more flexible, and so on and so forth. So identify your traffic and try to sell it, but sell it far away. You don't need to wait the last 3 months to sell. Sell 9, 12 months ahead. Next slide, please. Okay, the first one is obviously, and that sometimes some decisions are made. You know, it's basically using gut feeling, so that there is no data, there is no information, and we just say that yeah, this will work. No, it does not work today. The level of competitions, and especially now, that there will be, at the time of recovery, more capacity than demand from a certain time. I think that IATA is planning a full recovery of the aviation market in 23-24, meaning that the margin will be much lower. So you need to use some data, to have some proper tool that help you to make your decision. Don't think that, yes, what worked in the past will work in the future. It does not really happen that way. And if it was that simple, you know, everybody will know that. Okay, same things. It's also important that you try to look at the specific niche market where actually you can generate a higher revenue. Okay, next slide. Okay, and my last recommendations. We know that the post-crisis there will be lots of challenge. So you need really to be agile. And what that means to be agile is to be able to adjust quickly and fairly rapidly your schedule, your operations, but also the destinations you're operating. Okay, one of the key learning, and we have seen. I will just give you one specific example. 2 weeks ago, the UK considered Portugal as a safe destination. Okay, within 2 days, 2 days, okay, airlines from British Airways, a pretty traditional airlines, and TAP, but also the low cost, they added 57 flights per week between some airport in the UK and Portugal. Okay, so agility, this is it. You need to catch the opportunity. Be flexible in your schedule. If a destination does not work, stop it, find another one, and so on and so forth. Okay. Do you have any question, or do we have any questions?
Thank you very much, Christophe, for that insightful and informative presentation. Looking at the Q&A tab, I currently do not see questions from the floor.
Good. So I was clear, which is okay. The
Yes,
the positive side.
It's clear. And we are still digesting the very good recommendations that you have made on what airlines need to do as ingredients for sustainability. Yes, so we can wrap up the session.
Yeah.
So okay, thank you, Christophe.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Maureen. Thank you, the AFRA. Okay, and I wish a nice continuations of the conventions to all participants.
Thank you very much, Christophe. And before we close, the next session is actually a break, 20-minute break for you to go and grab a cup of coffee, tea, water, juice, and we will converge for the next presentation by AFRA, which will be on collaborative safety enhancement initiatives. This will be done by Mr. Gausu Konate, who is AFRA Director, Technical and Operations. In the presentation, we'll also highlight AFRA's initiative with UTD Aviation, the aspect of safety, and we'll have UTD CEO, Mr. Dahir Mohammed, who will be joining us for that presentation. And after that presentation, we have another session on cargo by Astral Aviation CEO, and we'll have the last panel of the day before we go to the closing ceremony. I just wish to inform you that you can take advantage of the attendee hub to book an appointment with a participant of interest. And the appointments will be hosted on a Zoom session for 20 minutes if the appointment request is accepted. Also take opportunity to visit the exhibition area. We have some virtual exhibition booths, and you can make some few contacts there. And we also look forward to welcoming you back for the next session. So stay tuned and catch up in a few. Thank you.